it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Freshly cut Christmas trees smelling of stars and snow and pine resin. Inhale deeply and fill your soul with wintry nights. Welcome, my dear friends, to Dr. Creepen's Christmas collaboration special. And what better way to spend the evening than with me and my friends as we tell you a series of 10 stories. Up first, we have a story by JoDog93, written exclusively for this event, entitled Be Careful Who You Wish For, performed by myself and Musey's Modern Dreadfuls. Emma Bennett vigorously scrubbed a pile of filthy dishes. She tilted her head and squinted her dark brown eyes as the warm rays of the golden sunset overwhelmed her vision. It'd be dark soon, and there were a million other things she'd rather be doing, but tonight was special, and everything needed to be perfect. Her cell phone dinged, indicating a text message. The ringtone was delicate, but was just enough to capture her wandering mind. An executive decision was made. Emma dropped the dish she was cleaning, letting it be overwhelmed by soapy water. Her wrinkled, pruny hands retrieved her cell phone. There was one new message, an unknown number. Be there soon. What's your address again? She furrowed her brow and clicked away on the phone's keypad.
Who is this?
Her gaze lingered at the ellipsis bubbling across the bottom of the message. A clear-cut answer flashed before her eyes seconds later. It's Samuel. I just need your address.
Oh, sorry.
She typed back.
My phone didn't recognize your number.
Just give me the address. Emma was taken aback by the stern response.
All right. Be chill. It's 1428 Adams Street.
Okay. See you soon. Emma put her phone down and went back to pre-company housework. Half an hour later, there was a knock at the door. Emma scampered over, dressed in a lovely black swing dress, nothing extravagant, perfect for a casual get-together. Her hands trembled as she gripped the doorknob. This was the moment of truth. After 15 years, they'd finally be together again. She inched the door open. Samuel was standing on the porch, upright with an assertive posture. Emma's eyes welled with tears of joy. Memories long burrowed in the back of her mind came swarming back. Memories of a childhood filled with love and laughter and fights and camaraderie.
Sam!
She threw her arms around him before he could react.
Brother, is it really you?
Well, who else would I be? His speech was slow and stilted. There was a sinister calculation to his words, as if each word was carefully thought out and planned before it came out of his mouth. Together again at last. Their parents had divorced when they were only children. Emma released him from her grip and wiped away her tears.
I'm sorry. I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but 15 years! It seems like only yesterday.
Has it been that long?
Yep,
she assured him.
Last time we saw each other, you were shorter than me, and I didn't have any gray hairs.
There was laughter behind her tears. She stepped back and took a moment to really look him up and down. The passing of the years could not erode the family resemblance. It was like she was looking into a gender-bent mirror. They both had their mother's dark hair and their father's Romanesque nose. Something was different about Samuel, though, and she couldn't quite put her finger on it. It was something about his eyes. When she stared into his eyes, something was missing. They weren't the eyes of her brother that she remembered.
You look good, brother, really. And you sound even better. I see you picked up Dad's English accent.
Thank you, Emma. You do too. I mean that. His voice was monotone, and the response was robotic. It was like he was only telling her what she expected to hear, not how he really felt. Samuel removed a pack of cigarettes and pursed one in between his lips. She was so surprised to see him smoking. When they were kids, he'd had horrible asthma, and now he didn't even use an inhaler. So, you gonna invite me in or what? He exhaled and released a puff of smoke. He didn't even cough.
Oh, silly me. Of course, come in and make yourself at home.
Emma guided him into the kitchen, and the two of them reminisced over coffee.
So, tell me.
She sipped away at her coffee.
Tell me something good. How are things?
Well, Emma, nothing too exciting.
Come on.
She interrupted.
Call me sis, like when we were kids. That was always our thing, remember? You were brother and I was sis. Don't you remember?
Honestly, life when we were all together is a little hazy. Well, he could see the disappointment in Emma's eyes, but was unfazed. What about you? He asked. Any boyfriends or kids or anything? Well, that was a touchy subject for her.
Well,
she huffed.
Not really. It was kind of hard to put myself out there after Mom got so sick.
How long has it been for Mom now?
2 years this October.
How was she towards the end?
She didn't complain much,
she said, holding back more tears.
But she asked about you a lot.
There was nothing. Not a hint of remorse.
You know, it would have been nice if you could have been there for her.
Samuel took a long, deliberate drink of his coffee. You know, Dad's not doing the greatest either. It's not easy getting away while trying to take care of him. That was right. Emma had almost completely forgotten about it. Her father had been physically and mentally deteriorating the last few years now. She'd only maybe seen him a handful of times after her parents had divorced. When they were separated, the courts had given each child a choice. Emma stayed with her mum and Jimmy went with his dad, and the rest was history. Now she wasn't even sure if her dad would remember her name anymore.
Did the doctors ever figure out what's going on with him?
Emma questioned. Oh, time really is the most terrible trick that can be played on the body and mind. You spend your life growing and learning, only to one day look in the mirror and see an empty shell of your former self, not remembering who or what you are. He's just getting old, Emma. Some days are worse than others, he explained. He's not even the same person anymore. He's delusional. He's become convinced that someone who looks like me has been following him around. I just don't know what to do with him. The thought of their father withering away made Emma wince. She massaged her forehead, trying to force her brain to process what she was hearing. They may not have had the closest relationship, but he was still her father no matter what. Ding ding. A text message came to Emma's cell phone. The vibration sent it teetering across the table like a spider. Do you need to get that? Samuel asked.
No, it's not important.
Emma picked up the phone off the kitchen table and hit a button, putting the screen to sleep.
Go on with what you were saying.
Well, the short answer is he's lost his mind. Nothing else to it.
I have some time off coming in the next couple of weeks. Maybe I can come out for a visit.
Samuel shrugged his shoulders. Well, if you want to waste your time, be my guest. He won't remember a thing.
Well, never say never. Maybe it will jog up some old memories.
Emma tried to remain optimistic that despite the rather glum news her brother had delivered to her, that just maybe a speck of her father remained. The oven timer chimed.
Oh, perfect timing,
she exclaimed.
I hope you're hungry, brother. I fixed us a couple of steaks. Will that be okay?
Absolutely delicious. Samuel joyously groaned, smacking his lips. Out in the dining room, the pair sat on opposite ends of the dinner table. A foreboding darkness enveloped the room. 2 flames danced atop candlesticks, softly draping the room in a reddish-orange hue. Emma sliced into her sirloin.
It's a good thing I found these candles, of all the times for the electric to be on the fritz. I have to get a guy out here to come and take a look at this. This old place is falling apart.
Don't worry, this is quite all right. There's nothing like the relaxing ambience of a candlelight dinner. You know what I like best about it?
What would that be?
She asked. Samuel took ear-splitting chomps out of his steak. The bloody red juices trickled down his chin. The cut of his meat was so rare she could almost hear the baby calf cry out in pain. She wondered if perhaps she should offer to cook it a little more. Well, he didn't seem to mind, though. Well, you see, he explained. There's too many distractions out there these days. You dim the lights a little bit. You focus on what's in front of you, what's most important. You learn to keep your eyes on the prize. Even through the faintly lit room, Emma could see that his eyes locked onto hers. She could feel him peering into her soul. Those devilishly blue eyes of his. This was not the warm, loving gaze of a brother. These were the all-consuming eyes that were found on lovers, not siblings. Emma jerked back in her chair and whipped her head away. She could not look into those eyes any more. This wasn't right. It was unnatural and unholy. Suddenly a blinding, lucent light illuminated the room. The lights were working again. Everything in the immediate area that worked on electricity sprang to life. There was even a small radio that Emma had plugged into the wall for music to liven up the dinner. The signal whined incoherently before finally settling on a radio station. Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult filled the airwaves.
Jesus Christ!
The shock had taken Emma's breath away. The wine glass she was holding plummeted to the floor, splashing 12 ounces of Cabernet all over the dark walnut hardwood floor. Whoops, Samuel chuckled. You really should be more careful, Emma. Watch out for glass. I'd hate you to slice open your foot and get blood all over the floor.
It's fine,
Emma assured.
The glass didn't shatter.
She let out a sigh of relief.
That scared the crap out of me.
Is there anything I can do to you? She wasn't sure that she'd heard him properly.
What's that?
Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you need some napkins? Thankfully, the spill was not as bad as she'd anticipated, so she neglected his offer of help. Emma retreated into the kitchen to grab a towel. Ding, 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 ding. Her cell phone still sat on the kitchen table from earlier. 2 more text messages had come in. Well, someone's a popular girl tonight, Samuel called out from the dining room.
Psh, hardly,
Emma responded. Someone must really need to tell you something.
It can wait. This is more important.
She stomped back into the dining room, carrying a towel in one hand and the rest of the bottle of wine in the other.
Can I offer you a refill?
Samuel took his coat off his chair and began searching the pockets. You know what, Emma? You're right. This is important. That wine you have there. Only a peasant would drink that. Well, the insult came so fast and was so razor-sharp it took Emma a second or two to really process what he'd just said.
What? What the hell did you just say?
No, don't misunderstand me, Emma. The wine is just fine. Well, for a girls' night or a Sunday brunch. This, on the other hand, is something much bigger. This is a reunion of flesh and blood. I am your one and only brother, after all. Emma set the bottle down on the table and placed her hands firmly on her hips.
Okay, smartass. Since you fancy yourself a big drinker. What did you have in mind?
After a moment more of fidgeting around, he retrieved a gunmetal grey flask from his coat pocket. He unscrewed the cap on it and took a heavy gulp from it. Now, this is the spirit. Pun intended, of course. He held out the flask. She anxiously reached out and grabbed the flask from him. She inched the top of it towards her nose. The smell of the drink alone was enough to intoxicate her. She pressed the rim of the flask against her lips and tilted her head back.
Ugh!
Emma coughed.
Man, this is strong. What is this stuff?
This here is Kentucky's finest bourbon. Take note of the smoky smell and the charred, fresh out of the barrel taste. And take note she did. A mental note to never touch the stuff again. I like to think of it as a nice warm hug for your throat. A good long smothering hug for your throat. And his veiny, claw-like hands began to wrap around her throat.
Okay, we're good. I get the idea.
She tapped on his arm. He began to ease his grip. As he was putting his hands down, she noticed a strange marking on his hand in between his thumb and index finger.
Hey, what's that? Are you okay? Did you have surgery or something?
Samuel held up his hand for her to get a closer look at it. It's a tattoo. It wasn't like any tattoo that Emma had ever seen before. It was one big circle, and on the inside of it was a horizontal line with 2 circles at each end overlapped by 4 more vertical markings of the same kind. She knew that it seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it.
Oh, now I see what it is. You're a car guy.
What?
That's the gear shift on a race car, no?
He said nothing and retreated his hand into his pocket. Silence, the unofficial third wheel of the evening, returned to show its ugly face when suddenly a mysterious sound emanated from the corner of the room. What was that? Asked Samuel. Emma had an idea of what it was. If she was right, this was just the icing on the cake for a disastrous evening. Her worst fears were confirmed and were met with repulsion when she checked the mousetrap that had been set earlier that day. Samuel followed her over to investigate. There it was, a nasty mouse stuck in the mousetrap, but still alive, barely clinging to life with a broken neck. Emma situated her right hand over her mouth, resisting the urge to heave.
Damn it! Of all the times to get caught!
Samuel leaned over and offered a hand. Please, allow me. He then picked up the mouse out of the trap and held it firmly in his hands.
Okay, now,
she instructed.
Just firmly grasp its neck. The trap must not have completely snapped it. We want to end this quick.
He began to squeeze. And moments later, any residual signs of life had ceased.
Okay, brother, that's enough.
But he wouldn't stop squeezing. He gripped tighter and tighter, like he did when she'd noticed his odd tattoo, only this time he wouldn't stop. The cracking and crunching of bone and flesh made her feel ill.
Come on, brother, stop it.
He persisted.
Sam, that's enough. Give it a rest. Sam, stop it.
He opened his hand. Splat. The mangled remains of the mouse plopped onto the floor. Where there was once a living creature, now lay a mangled pile of blood and tissue. Emma felt like she was going to be sick. She hurried back over to the kitchen and began splashing cold water on her face. She'd never felt this rotten in her life. That was the cruelest thing she'd ever seen. How could someone do something like that? Ding, 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 ding. Her phone again. She could have sworn it was off. Or maybe the phone didn't power all the way down that time. Not wanting to go back and face the corpse of the rat, she took the opportunity to check her phone. There were 8 missed calls and 14 unread text messages, all from a number recognized by her phone. Brother Sal. Her eyes widened when she got to the final message. It read, "Hey sis, I don't know why you aren't answering your phone, but I hope this message gets to you in time. I don't know who he is and I don't know where he came from. All I know is that I saw him today when I was getting my asthma inhaler prescription refilled. He followed me home and I've been locked in my bathroom for the past few hours now. I know you were looking forward to getting together tonight, but there's no way I'm going to go outside right now. Jesus, Dad was right this whole time. If on the off chance it knows where you live, please take precautions and stay indoors. He may look like me and sound like me, but I promise you that that is not me. Whatever you do, don't let him into the house." Just then, Emma heard a familiar voice coming from outside the kitchen door. "Oh, Emma, what's the matter? Come on out and give your brother a kiss for taking care of that nasty old mouse." Isn't it true that nothing ever seems too bad, too hard, or too sad when you've got a Christmas tree in the living room? Our second story this evening is by author Jojo, and it's entitled Looking for a Good Time? Get Casey Lacy on the line, and it's performed by Pumpkin Queen and Weekly Creeps.
Hey there, handsome. What's your name?
Her voice was sweet when it reached my ear, just as I had expected it to be. It was the kind of voice you'd hear on the TV ads, the kind that lulls you into buying a new pen that you don't really need or that made you reconsider life insurance. I sat on the couch for a moment, just staring at the dark wall. I couldn't believe I was put into a room that looked so worn down. I couldn't believe I was even hearing her voice. "It's Jack," I replied. I think I was contemplating using a fake name, but decided it wouldn't separate me from the shame.
Looking for a good time? Get Casey Lacy on the line.
The ad repeated in my head. A woman laying on the bed talking to the phone as the phone number flashed on the screen. Bright red numbers with a white outline that seared into my memory. I had seen the ad plenty of times before during late-night television. Never had I thought about calling the number. But there I was, sitting on the crumbling couch, phone in hand.
Well, Jack, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Casey,
she responded. I couldn't help but let out a small chuckle, my breath wafting against the fingers held in front of my lips, remnants of chewed nails still in my mouth. It was funny because I had already accepted those charges and put in my credit card number, so it wasn't like I was expecting someone else. I've never done anything like this before, I said, almost ignoring her formality, and I could hear her laugh on the other end of the line. I never thought I would be lonely enough to need to, I blurted out, not putting thought into words escaping me.
Well, you're not lonely anymore, Jack. I'm here with you.
Her voice was so smooth, each word dripping into reason, one after the other. It was almost enough to calm my bouncing leg.
So, why don't we have some fun?
She continued, her voice growing more sultry, more alluring by the second. If I was a sailor, I'd swear Casey was a siren. I needed fun. It had been a while since I managed to find a semblance of happiness, ever since my wife left me, taking little Andy with her. I miss seeing their faces. I tried calling them every day, but the call was never answered. I called her number so much that eventually I just ended up dialing another phone number from memory. Casey Lacy. I'd like that, I said, standing up. I pace around whenever I'm on the phone, and sitting down was making me too anxious. Walking around the room, I looked down, my socks slowly becoming darker from the grime of the room. Disgusting, I thought to myself. I'd rather be anywhere else, but I had nowhere else to go. I just had to sit in my filthy room and hope Casey would take my mind off things.
Well, why don't you tell me what you consider fun?
Casey provided. The way she said fun was so heavily saturated with a suggestive tone that I could almost feel the phone getting heavier in my hand. I replied. I told her things that I and my wife used to do together. The things that she would say to me that would make me happy. Things that would turn me on. As we talked more and more, I could feel my heart beating in my chest. The room was so still that I could almost hear it. My nerves were rising and I paced around quicker. Soon enough, my socks had almost become completely black. And disgusting. And then Casey asked me about why my wife had left. It took me off guard, but I think she could tell I was distracted. I wasn't exactly playing along with this fantasy she was weaving for me. So I told her about how I smoked. Way too much. One night I was sitting on the couch smoking. Something I did far too often. Someone had knocked at the door and I got up to answer it, but I had forgotten my cigarette on the arm of the couch. It was my fault. I don't blame her for leaving me. I was always reckless like that. Never really changed, even when there was a newborn in the house, I concluded. My words drifting into the painfully dry air. I stood still in the room and looked around at where my carelessness had brought me, where my decisions had pulled me.
Tell me, Jack, did your wife?
Her voice slowly morphed away from the silk that I had grown accustomed to over the past half hour.
Sound like this?
She finished her sentence, but the words continued bouncing around in my head. I might have been grief-stricken, but the way Casey mimicked my wife's voice was uncanny. So much so I could feel a tear forming in my eye. How did you... I began to question before cutting myself off. I mean, she couldn't possibly know what my wife sounded like. Maybe I was just so desperate to hear her voice again that I tricked myself into hearing it. I thought until she spoke again.
Did you miss me, Jack?
Casey spoke, mimicking my wife once again.
I'm sorry we had to leave you.
I've heard my wife say that before, and somehow Casey copied each cadence of her voice.
Why don't you come back to me again?
She continued. I felt the heat rising in my stomach. I remember screaming at my wife in her bedroom the last time I saw her. She was just lying there, refusing to respond to me. Casey gave me no time to understand her little gift. She was digging into my life and pulling at the things that I so desperately wanted to hear from my wife. But the words that I thought that I wanted to hear started causing a pain in my chest. The memories of my life with her were too heavy, and now she was being replaced by some voice on the phone. Okay, that's enough. Let's do something else, I spoke. Finally responded to Casey, the hot air escaping my lips. My pacing had stopped, and all I could do was stare down at the dark floor below my feet.
Come to me, Jack,
she said, still in my wife's voice. Her words were flirtatious, but also commanding, like I didn't really have a say in the matter. I said stop. I don't know why I couldn't hang up the phone. Maybe it was because it was her voice. I couldn't hang up as long as my wife's voice came from that other line.
Come to me, Jack,
she said, more forceful, more aroused. The words hiding within her heightened moaning. It sounded just like we were in bed together. I could picture my wife laying next to me, flashing me a quick smile. But when things were still good, "Stop, goddammit!" I shouted into the phone. Just as my words came out of my mouth, I settled myself down.
Jack, how did he get this number?
Casey calmly responded to me, her voice returning to the smooth that she had had when she first picked up. The TV ad.
Oh, honey.
I could feel the phone in my hand getting hotter as she laughed once again on the other line.
When do you remember seeing those ads?
Her voice sounded so confident, so sure of herself that she was going to catch me with something. I thought back to the ad, the bright flashing numbers I'd seen late at night. After my dad had fallen asleep and I thought I could see some dirty stuff on late night TV when I was a kid. I had seen those ads when I was a kid.
That's right, baby. Casey Lacy is dead.
Her voice, no longer like silk. It was like spikes digging into my head.
And when you call one of us, you call all of us.
This time, Casey's voice had shifted back to my wife's. Or rather, what I was hearing was my wife's voice.
Come to me, Jack.
She poked once more before I dropped my phone on the floor. It clattered against the ashy floor as I stumbled backwards. But her voice didn't stop. She continued the phrase, getting louder and louder with each passing, almost forcing me to think back on that night. Sitting on the couch, tired from work, I grabbed a cigarette and started smoking. I could see our baby bundled up on the couch next to me. There was a knock at the door and I got up to answer it. Just some kid at the wrong house. I was so tired. I wasn't thinking. Looking over at the baby, she was just so fast asleep, I figured I could just use the bathroom quickly. The couch must have gone up so quickly. Maybe I fell asleep in the bathroom for a moment. I was so tired. By the time the smoke was creeping out of the bathroom door, it was too late. I tried rushing to the couch where my little girl was, but instead I saw my wife. She was just standing by the couch, looking down at the roaring fire, almost ignoring the flames creeping around her. Without a word, she just turned around and headed back upstairs. She laid down in her bed and refused to move. Anytime I touched her, she would fight me. She didn't say a word to me the whole time, but I screamed. I told her I was sorry and that she could still make it out. All the oxygen I wasted yelling at her had me passing out on the floor. Being on the floor saved my life. I was away from the smoke, but my wife was taken by it, and nothing the firefighters or paramedics did brought her back. Night after night, I returned to that charred home, sitting on the couch and just be there, where I deserved to be, calling my wife hoping one day her charred and melted phone would pick up. And then I called Casey. Listening to my wife yelling at me to go with her, I could see the flames creeping up from under the darkness, like they were being called by her voice, conducted by her will. They, of course, started on the couch. I could feel the heat. I couldn't move, but I wanted to see her again. Her voice continued and I could hear other voices under it. They were all screaming, trying to get the attention of the people they left behind. The fire crawled its way to my hand, licking at the fingertips and my jagged and chewed fingernails. For a moment, I let it reach me. I began to let the fire crawl across my skin. The sensation wasn't like I was expecting. It wasn't hot. It was soothing. Like it would be easy for me just to slip away. Staring at my chipped fingernails. Disgusting, I said to myself, echoing what my wife would say whenever she saw me chewing my nails. Maybe it was because I didn't fight the flames, that I was ready to accept retribution for what I had done to my family. Because I was ready to step through that door, that not being able to would be my ultimate punishment. As the flames took me, wrapped my body in a blanket, and within a blink, it was morning. The sun creeping through the window shining all over the ash and burned furniture. It had its kind of beauty. I can still feel it. The soothing fire just under my skin and soaking my pores, that never-ending sensation of being just a few inches from burning. It's a feeling I'll have until I can feel much hotter flames. I tried calling Casey again, but just like my wife, no one ever picks up. Being allowed to hear her one more time feels like a blessing and a curse. I know I'll see her again someday, but judging by the things I heard those other voices saying, I imagine it isn't such a fun place.
Christmas. Oh, it's most truly Christmas when we celebrate it by giving the light of love to those who need it most. Our third story in tonight's collaboration spectacular is by PA Nightmare and is entitled Fresh Meat, performed by myself and Madame Frightmare. In West Virginia, there's nothing for miles. As a trucker, it can be pretty lonely traveling alone. So when the chance for some company came along, I didn't hesitate. After days of traveling with no interaction other than some very disinterested and not very talkative truckers, I came across a lovely hitchhiker on a cold, rainy night. Well, she seemed too young to be homeless, which broke my heart. So I took pity on her and allowed her into the cab of my truck. We're not permitted to pick up hitchhikers, but I said the hell with it. I was in real need of some human interaction, and I couldn't just leave her out there. Pulling the truck over, the young girl opened the door and got in.
Oh my God! Thank you so much for pulling over and giving me a ride. I've been walking for days, and no one seems to pick up hitchhikers anymore. I totally blame the movies. Like, look at me. What could I do to someone? I'm so tired, and I haven't had a proper meal in days. It's nice to at least be in a warm, dry place out of the cold and the rain.
No worries, little lady. May I ask, how old are you? You seem far too young to be homeless.
I'm 18. Right after graduation, my parents kicked me out of the house, and I have no one to go to. So, here I am homeless and in the cab with some old guy who, for all I know, wants to kill me or do something very scary to me.
Oh, little lady, I just stopped to help. No one forced you in the cab of my truck. If you want out, you can just leave right now. I just thought you needed some help, and being that my mama raised me right, I stopped to assist you.
Ashamed, the hitchhiker looks at the floor of the truck and quietly says, "My name is Allie. I'm sorry if I offended you. I'm very grateful for the ride, but do you by any chance have anything to eat? Like I said, it's been days since I've had a last real meal." The trucker eyed her and then breaks out in a big smile.
Well, Allie, it's nice to meet you. No need to be ashamed. I get it. Nowadays, you can't just go around trusting strangers, now can you? I'm Dave, and yes, of course, I have some food I can make for you in the back of my truck at the next stop.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much. How long is it until we get to the truck stop?
Won't be for another couple of hours. I have a lot of driving to do before we reach the truck stop. If you need something to hold you over, in my lunchbox is a bottle of water and a granola bar. Help yourself to them.
Allie looks at Dave, still not fully trusting him, and decides not to take him up on his offer. Instead, she continues to talk to him. So, Dave, you got a wife and kids?
Actually, yes. Me and the missus just celebrated 40 years together. As for the kids, none of them live at home with us. They've all grown up and are out of the house. Never quite the same without them, if you know what I mean.
That's nice. I really want kids. But I gotta figure out this homeless problem first, before I can even dream of having a future with someone. What are the names of your wife and kids?
My wife's name's Teresa, and my boys Alex and little Jack. Oh, they are my world, and I'd do anything for them. Even work this crappy third-shift trucker job. Well, the pay isn't bad, nor is the job. The hours were a killer when the kids were growing up. I missed a lot of important moments. Don't get to spend much time with a wife either. If you open the glove box, my wallet's there. You can see the pictures of my beautiful family.
Allie opens the glove box and gets Dave's wallet out. As soon as she opens it, she sees many photos of his beautiful wife and amazing children. Allie can't help herself. She says, "One day, I hope to have a family just like yours." Dave and Allie spend the next few hours just laughing and exchanging stories. As Allie grew more comfortable and started to trust Dave, she asked, "Is the offer for water still good? I'm really thirsty."
Yep. Help yourself to whatever you want. We should be getting to the truck stop soon, so you can get some real food in your system.
Thank God. I am starving. I would literally eat anything at this point. Oh, is that the truck stop there?
Oh, well, look at that. We were closer than I thought. All right, looks like chow time. Let me get the truck pulled into a parking space and do my books, and then we'll eat. Sound good to you?
Hell yeah. That sounds amazing. You've been such good company, and I've enjoyed our talk.
Me too. Oh, it's been so long since I've had a great conversation like this. Really has been a pleasure to get to know you. Well now, if you want, we can go back and have a bite to eat.
That sounds fantastic. Are we going to go into the truck stop to eat? Allie thinking to herself, I've gotten to know him a little better, and he seems nice enough. But do I trust him enough to take food that he offers me?
No need to go in unless you need to use the restroom. My wife always packs a large amount of food, and I've got a hot plate to warm it up. I mean, just look at that place. I wouldn't trust anything that comes out of that shithole. Today, my old lady packed a nice roast with some potatoes and mixed veggies. Now, tell me how that sounds.
Yum! It has been so long since I've had home cooking. The excitement was clear on her face, and her apprehension and doubt completely vanished. After Dave had finished his books, he exclaimed,
Okay, well, how about that food now?
She got up right after Dave did and followed him to the back of the truck.
There's not a lot of room back here, but I do have a pull-out tray table that you can use.
Getting to work, he turned on the hot plate and warmed it up. Grabbing a small skillet, he went to work warming up the food that had been packed for dinner. By the time Dave was finished warming everything up, the truck smelled wonderful. Dave sat down Allie's plate on the tray table and then sat down in the driver's seat. As they ate, Allie noticed that this didn't taste or look like beef, but just figured it was some kind of a pork roast instead. The conversation flowed easily, and she enjoyed her meal. After all was said and done, she was stuffed. Standing up, she turned around and stopped as Dave spoke.
Well, now that you've helped me empty the last of my old stock, looks like I'll need to replenish it, won't I?
Allie slowly turned around to ask him what he meant, but before she could ask the question, something hit her hard, and her world was enveloped in darkness. Waking up, she had a hard time focusing on her surroundings. She thought that maybe she had a concussion. Minutes later, she was finally able to focus on her environment, only to realize that she was upside down in a meat freezer, and her feet were bound by a chain strung up on a meat hook, while her wrists were tied firmly by the rope secured to the concrete slab on the floor. The longer she was conscious, the more she struggled. She felt the blood rushing to her head. It sounded like her heart was in her ears. While attempting to scream, she realized she was unable to properly breathe, and this caused the blood to rush to her head and almost made her black out several times. The door slowly opens, and Allie once again attempts to scream for help, only to realize that the person who stepped into the freezer was Dave.
Well now, look who's awake. Now, little lady, there's no need to try and scream. It'll only cause you more pain and stress. No one likes bitter meat.
Allie responds in a rough whisper. Why are you doing this? Please let me go.
We both know, my dear, that won't be happening. Even if I was inclined to do so. You just run to the cops, and we can't have that now, can we?
Allie begins to cry. Please, Dave. What would your family think? Just let me go. I promise I won't tell anyone. Why are you doing this to me? You treated me so well. I would be willing to help you lure more people here. If you spare me, please. Dave bends down.
I don't think that's in the cards for you, little lady. And after all, you really enjoyed that roast, didn't you? Well, let me tell you what that was. That was the last fella I gave a ride to. You enjoyed him. Only fair you take their place, and as for my family, you actually think them pictures were my kin. It's all an act. This here is my family. We built this truck stop. Been living in these parts for ages. This is a family tradition. When our young come of age and our pa takes us out on a hunting trip to bag us a long pig.
Right after Dave is done speaking, Allie sees a shadow come up from behind her. Dave speaks again.
You're in luck, little lady. My boy just come of age. He's gonna bag his first kill.
Allie feels a tug on the back of her head and the sting of cold steel across her throat. She feels a brief pain and hears the gurgling of her windpipe as she fades into the dark void of emptiness.
Some Christmas tree ornaments do more than just glitter and glow. They represent a gift of love given a long time ago. Our fourth story tonight features the voices of Baron von Pastor and Filia Noctis. It's written by Baron von Pastor and is called The Harvest Man.
What are the chances I just heard a couple of yuppies talking about wandering to Wilkins Caverns?
Ross and I pulled our beers close as a wobbly local braced himself on our table. The old man swayed, his wild eyes oscillating between us.
About the same as having your drink spilled by eavesdropping yokels,
Ross said. She downed her beer and slammed her empty glass on the table for emphasis.
Hey, easy there. A fellow tries to do something nice and gets his head bit off for the trouble.
The bearded old man slurred.
But I guess if you're fixing to die down in the dark, there's nothing for it.
He waved his hand dismissively and turned away. I bristled at the comment. The only thing Ross and I were better at than photography was caving, and we were damn good at both. We made our living selling pictures of breathtaking chambers and previously undiscovered troglodytes to nature magazines. There was no way this crusty old man knew something we didn't. I tapped him on the shoulder. All right, what wisdom must you impart to us, Gandalf the Drunk? The man's eyes narrowed as he visibly swallowed the indignity. He seemed to calculate his words before he whispered, You folks ever hear tell of the Harvest Man?
Hold on a sec. This is gonna be good.
Ross laughed and signaled the bar for another drink. The old man continued with yet another glare.
Years and years ago now, a man named Jeremy Buckland had the harebrained idea to homestead a pecan farm. He was honestly surprised when it proved difficult to push water uphill into a desert. Drove him stark crazy out there in the blistering sun, working the cracked earth. He took on a few hands, and day after day they toiled with nothing to show for it. Just hemorrhaging money all the while. His farmhands say that one night, Jeremy bolted out of his house screaming like a madman. He took off into the caves and was never seen alive again. It took a while to clear out his property, his help and locals descending on the scraps like vultures. But that's when people started going missing. Every night it seemed somebody would disappear. Those that got out in time swore they saw Jeremy's shriveled face turned into leather by the sun, just watching them. They say they could only catch glimpses of him, peeking around rocks and never coming into the light. To this day, once the sun goes down, they say he emerges from Wilkins Caverns to roam the desert, searching for the blood of the innocent to water his crops, that he may finally reap the harvest he never received in life.
Ross and I pantomimed abject terror to each other, letting his last words hang in the air. We burst out laughing, causing the old man to growl and spin back to the bar. Ross slapped the table and called out after him.
Hey, old man Jenkins. See you later when you try and scare us off your treasure, or whatever.
Yeah, we'll give Scooby and the gang a heads up. I managed, wiping away tears. That good laugh was exactly the nightcap we needed. We paid our tab and headed off to our motel rooms. Be it because of the remote location or the rumors, no one had bothered to develop Wilkins Caverns into a tourist destination. Ours was the only vehicle parked at the trailhead. I popped the trunk and started rummaging through our equipment one last time. We were fully stocked. Most of our caving gear we wore on our persons, but hauling the tripods and camera equipment slowed us down. We took our topo maps, glow sticks, even some road flares for some dynamic final shots. It was a relatively short hike up to the caverns. I knew we were at work, but I still stopped to smell the prickly pears, as it were. Passing by some bear grass, yellow bells, and autumn sage. We trudged through the mesquite-invaded vegetation of the higher hills. It must have rained recently. Bright green ocatio leaves pointed our way to the entrance. Whistling winds gave to silence the further we ventured into the depths. In no time at all, our headlamps cast the only light onto the limestone walls. According to our maps, we would follow the single winding tunnel to a narrow section which opened into a grand chamber. From there, we had several branching paths to choose from. We went about setting up the floodlights in silence. After so many shoots, our work had become rather perfunctory. Ross slowly circled some stalagmites, snapping pictures. I heard her shutter stop and turned to see her studying the camera display.
Did you seriously get all the way out here without me noticing the Jeep was gone? That is some serious commitment to a prank, dude.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
With a snort of air from her nose, she thrust the display in my face. In the top right corner of the picture, tucked into the cavern wall, was a tawny smudge. It was heavily blurred by motion, but I could discern eyes and what appeared to be a wide, sorrowful mouth. Oh, that's fantastic. Did you shop that before we came out? I gotta say, I'm impressed, Rossi. Each of us gave knowing looks as we backed away from each other. I was on guard the rest of the shoot for whatever trick she had planned. Ross, cleverly, pretended to be dubious of me. I made my way to the far corner of the chamber, treading over seldom disturbed rocks. I kept my back to the wall as to keep an eye on Ross when my foot slid into a divot. The echoes of pebbles tumbling into a large space drew my attention. I looked down only to jump back. My foot was precariously close to the edge of a drop. A small crack, maybe a little more than a foot wide, opened the cave floor into an expanse below. This was amazing. I'd memorized the maps of Wilkins Caverns to a T. Such a large section would have definitely been included. I suppose the angle of one's light shining from the main path obscured this area perfectly. I felt a surge of exhilaration. So much of our work had become mundane, every mystery discovered and documented before I was even born. I felt then a semblance of the first time I ventured below the earth, and in my excitement, I made an error. I saw a ledge I thought I could reach, and with a call out to Ross, I slid feet first into the crack. I'd overestimated the size of the ledge and felt my foot slip off into the darkness. I'd underestimated how bulky my gear made my torso, and the quick fall was stopped snugly by the vice grip of the crack. I screamed for Ross, but felt myself slide ever so slightly further down, the rock seizing on my chest with every panicked breath. The light of my headlamp and my hot breath bounced off the wall half an inch in front of my face.
Ross!
Barry cried in excitement. Yeah, like I was going to wander off into that dark corner he just happened to go into right after I called him out.
Ross?
Barry yelled again. This time, I almost believed the urgency in his voice. I approached his blob of light and found him sunk into the floor up to his shoulders. He had one arm above the surface, weakly waving and slapping at the wall.
I think I'm really stuck,
he said. Sure, he was stuck. I'd go over there, and a rubber snake would pop out of his collar or something. I could hear his feet scraping against the rock below, trying to gain purchase. I gave his free arm a cautious tug. When he didn't so much as budge, I stooped down to heave on the drag handle on his pack. He was stuck fast. He may have actually slid down even deeper from my efforts. He was hyperventilating. I had to calm him down. Hey, just hang on. I'll call the cavalry. They'll bring a winch and every stick of butter in the county to pop you out, I joked. It was a good thing he was facing the wall because my face betrayed the calm I was trying to project in my voice. I took off his headlamp and placed it beside him to give him wiggle room. The light projected the shadow of his profile on the wall.
Yeah, I'll sit tight,
he said with a nervous laugh. I left the camera stuff and made for the exit. I was nearly out of the chamber when I realized my phone was still in my pack. I doubled back to retrieve it and noticed the area was slightly brighter. The giant shadow of Barry's head no longer dominated the far wall. I bolted towards him, worried he'd fallen. My vision reeled at the incomprehensible scene before me. Barry's head slumped over sideways, barely hanging on by a thin flap of skin. An incredibly clean cut had eviscerated the back of his neck. The white of his spine peeked through, a curtain of blood draining out of his skull. The horrific injury battled a brown blur for my complete attention. At the sound of my breath catching in my throat, whatever was near Barry ascended to the ceiling on a black line, as if it were attached to a bungee. From above, jointless legs as thick as ropes searched their way down onto the light. It moved in complete silence, the only sounds splats of blood dripping down from the blobbing brown ball. The movement was disorienting, but I managed to get a good look at it. The way the grooves and spine on its carapace played with the light gave the illusion of a mournful human face. I could see its true face, though. 2 gleaming black beads flanked by fierce mandibles. I drew the knife from my belt and jabbed the creature as it neared. The blade deflected with a dull thunk. It was like stabbing a coconut on a string. It lashed at me. I heard my knife drop to the cave floor and felt warmth blossom across my hand. The cut was so clean, I didn't feel the pain from my missing fingers for several seconds. More of the legs encircled me, giving it better leverage to keep up the barrage. I slipped off my backpack and used it as a shield. The canvas didn't last long against the relentless attacks. It retracted up out of sight and then struck with those scissor-like fangs from a different angle. The contents of the pack clattered to the floor of the chamber. A flash of red bounced away. One of the road flares. I abandoned my tattered pack and dove for the flare. Now exposed, I felt a sharp pain spit at my side as I collapsed onto the flare. I twisted off the cap and hoped that I hadn't bled so much that it wouldn't light. The moment I dragged the flare across the rough stone floor, the attacks let up. I held the flare aloft. Not a sound or sight of the thing remained. I spared one last glance for Barry's corpse before stumbling for the exit. I've been questioned a few times about what they initially called death by misadventure. With Barry's body missing, my injuries, and the signs of a bloody struggle, the questioning I received got increasingly invasive. I also can't help but notice that they've stationed an officer outside my room.
Santa Claus is anyone who loves another and seeks to make them happy, who gives himself by thought or word or deed in every gift that he bestows. Our 5th story this evening was written by Madame Raven. It features Madame Raven and myself, and is called Nevada Desert, Summer of 1999.
It's the summer of 1999. A body was found in an undisclosed place in the Nevada desert. It was identified as one Malcolm Smith, a slightly shady archaeologist. A tape recorder was found nearby. The following is the surprisingly intact audio. Oh, why does this have to be so far from a road or track? Air conditioning would be miraculous right now.
Oh yes, so many discoveries found next to a bloody road. This place has never been investigated by anyone in the modern world. I've been assured of that. It'll be a huge discovery. Trust me, Julia.
Right. Like the Congo and that thing in the Urals? Why did you ask me to join you on this?
Because everyone else said no.
Oh, so it's obviously a wonderful thing. I feel so flattered, Malcolm.
You know full well it's because I trust you. You've always had my back.
Damn straight. After that fiasco in Chile, you know I was the only one who came to your wedding.
It's not far now. Just over the next rise.
Do you know the kind of petroglyphs are there? Any idea what they look like?
What? No idea. Just that they're there. Here. It should be just behind this boulder. It's a crack. We can't really tell it's a cave unless you step in. Here, take a hold of my shirt. It's a bit of a steep decline.
Maybe you should just break out the ropes or even the whole climbing gear?
No, I just want to peek in first.
I won't be able to hold you. If you... Ow! Flip. Are you alright?
Fine. I won't ask if you are, as you landed on top of me.
Good. You deserve it. Where's your pack? You've got the climbing gear.
At the cave's entrance. I was only going to take a look.
Oh, that worked out great. At least I have my stuff. No climbing gear, though.
See anything? Not a very large chamber, is it?
There are some petroglyphs. I can't quite make out what they might be. What nation do you suppose was involved in this? Paiute? Shoshone?
Dina?
Navajo? Out this far west? Are you sure? Malcolm, are you sure you weren't scammed? You should know better.
I'm sure. Listen, it isn't just for petroglyphs that we're here. There are no burials here either.
Oh, great. What are we here for then? Giant gingers? Thunderbirds?
Oh, a Thunderbird could be useful in getting us back up that shaft.
Malcolm.
All right, Julia. It's supposed to be a doorway.
I have doorways back home. I wish I was there right now.
Well, it's a doorway to other dimensions. Look, that's not so crazy. Science and maths prove there could be other universes, and the legends, well, the Dina, and other nations believe they came from a place underground. Another world before they were led to the surface.
Yes, but I thought that was southwest Colorado.
That's what they told people. Outsiders, of course. In central South Utah, there's a canyon that has petroglyphs of beings, well, horrible monsters. They guard the gate back to the underground entrance to Earth. Now, why would it be on the west of the Navajo area if the gate was in Colorado?
I remember those. They were unsettling to see, to say the least. But why here? Why this far into Nevada? Oh, now I'm buying into it. Where did you get the info and map, Malcolm? Did you win in a card game? Or get someone drunk for it?
No. Okay. Both. But the information is legitimate, Julia. No, I know it. You told me things I knew, but wasn't common knowledge along with this story and map. He was honestly terrified too. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, just great. Maybe the doorway will get us to a nice restaurant or casino, despite the fact I adore being stuck in a cave with no way out.
Oh, we can climb that, no problem. Let's take a look around. Do you have another lantern?
No, but I have a flashlight in the side pocket. Hand me my camera while you're at it.
Sure. Oh, they're unique figures, aren't they?
Yeah, lots of people and monsters I would prefer not to meet. This large swirl, do you think it's the doorway?
Most likely. Looks like it's at the end of the corridor.
This here, it seems to be telling of the Dene creation myth, ending with their journey out of the fourth world into this one. The swirl again.
Hey, Julia, I found some artifacts over in this corner. Looks like some very nice and intact jars. No weathering or fading due to the sunlight or wind. I think this might just help us pay for this outing and then some.
Malcolm, you know they should go to the Dene, or better yet, be left alone.
Fine. Hand me the camera.
I found a passage. I'll see how long it is. Looks like a large swirl on the wall at the end. It's a closed passage. Wait, Malcolm? This swirl isn't right.
Oh, so it goes to the left then?
Well, yes, but... It's moving.
Moving? How?
Rippling like water, but spinning.
Is it water? I can hear dripping. Maybe it started raining.
Some water, but it's more like...
Julia, more like what?
Malcolm, I'm stepped out of the cave. I'm outside, but it's night.
Where did you go? There's no exit here, and it's only 2 p.m. We may be in for a downpour. Flash floods are a real danger. Come back the way you went?
I can't. It isn't there. It's way too wet to be Nevada unless we walked all the way to Tahoe. There are weird pines and other trees I don't recognize. It almost looks like an island. It doesn't smell right.
Julia, listen. Feel around to try and find the doorway. It may be hidden.
I am. There's nothing there, Malcolm. I can't get out. Something's coming. Something big. Damn it, get me out, Malcolm.
Julia, what can I do? Something's wrong down here. I think there's a flood coming. Julia, I'm sorry. Probably the reason we all go so haywire at Christmas time, with the endless, unrestrained, and often silly buying of gifts, is that we don't quite know how to put our love into words. Story number 6 is written by Ateris. It's entitled The Adam Gene, and is performed by Ateris and Madame Raven.
The Adam Gene.
Lily, can you drop those onions in the pan?
Sure. I have a question. Can we do something, I don't know, different tomorrow?
Sure. What'd you have in mind?
I don't know yet, but it'll be our 3rd year together. And as much as I love your cooking, I just want to do something else. Something more than just a nice dinner out and a movie. You know?
Okay. I have an idea. Be ready by 6, and I'd recommend a jacket.
Really? What do you have in mind?
No spoilers. You'll need to wait and see.
All right. You're on. All right, Adam. Next time you have something like this in mind, at least tell me your plan on hiking. I would have preferred to know.
Sorry, but I didn't want to give too much away. If I would have said we were hiking, you would have been paying attention to where we were driving, right? And if that happened, you'd know where we were right now, and that'd completely ruin the surprise.
What surprise? It just seems like a long hike. Is there something?
Well, how is it?
This is beautiful. How did you find this?
Jason told me. Said that he was looking around for some smaller off-the-beaten trails and found this gem. Went up here and camped in front of the city skyline. Told me that the night view when all the lights were out was really something special.
I can see why. You live here for 6 years, and it never looks like anything but gray. This is incredible, though.
Oh, glad you like it. But now that I have your attention, go around that tree over there.
You didn't lug all this stuff up here, did you?
No, definitely not. I had help.
Who helped you get it all the way out here?
Coming out, Vic.
Who's this?
This is Victor. He'll be joining us for the night. His brother just finished cooking everything and will be cleaning it all up by the end. I know you said you wanted something different than the usual nice dinner, and hopefully this will be okay. Alone in the forest, fresh cooked by a top chef, beautiful city skyline in the distance, and some wonderful music provided by the city's finest.
Something tells me you didn't cook this up last night after I brought it up. There's no way you got all of this together this afternoon.
Yeah, you never know. I could have done it.
No, you didn't.
Alright, fine, you caught me. I've been planning this for over 3 months, although I'd be lying if I wasn't worried last night when you said something more than just a nice dinner.
This definitely counts as something more than just a nice dinner.
Good. Glad you approve. Now, let's say we see what Alfred's cooked up for us, huh?
After all that hiking, I'm sure just about anything will be fine.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks for the food and music. So, how was it?
That was... I think I ate too much. Totally worth it, though.
Yeah, no kidding. Top chef is an understatement. Even in all my years of being a chef myself, that's something I aspire to be.
As much as I love your food, I wouldn't mind that at all. You know, this really is beautiful. We need to get outside more often. Everything okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Just kind of taking it all in, that's all.
It's a gorgeous city when you're not living in it.
Yeah, but not just that.
The forest behind us? Nature?
No, us. The last 3 years. It's just crazy to think it's been 3 years already.
Yep, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. You know, these last 3 years have been some of the best years of my life. Even with work going well, mom and dad moving out here, me becoming an uncle, none of that even compares. With everything going right in my life, looking back, the best parts were when I was with you. Everything pales in comparison to you. Lily, you are the most wonderful, beautiful, remarkable, brilliant, charming person I know.
Adam.
Lily, these last few years with you have been incredible. I can't imagine spending the rest of them with anyone else. Lily, will you marry me?
So, speaking of marriage, guess who else got engaged tonight?
Who?
Marcus and Kim.
Really?
Yep. They just put up a picture of her ring a couple minutes ago. That thing must have cost a fortune.
With Marcus, you know it had to be expensive. Dude spends way more money than he makes, especially when it comes to Kim.
Yeah, not my problem, though. Honestly, I would have still said yes if you got a cheap plastic piece from Walmart. It's beautiful, though. So, since you had all this planned out, do you have any ideas for the wedding?
Not really. I'd be fine with just eloping and spending all the extra money on an extended honeymoon. Maybe take a trip to Europe and do some traveling. Maybe a trip to Asia. You know, Japan, Korea, the works. I don't know yet. Figured I'd run it by you first. I know you've been wanting a big wedding for a while now, though.
Mom tell you?
Of course. She mentioned it when I asked her for permission.
Well, you know, I've always wanted some sort of themed wedding. Growing up, the whole Disney princess thing was always a dream of mine. Big wedding with knights in a castle. Of course, when I grew up, I found out what money was and how expensive something like that would be. Although I'd be down to do anything. As much as a big wedding is a dream of mine, taking a really long honeymoon to go do some traveling would also be nice.
We can do either or. I'm fine with no matter what it is, as long as it's with you.
Aw, you're gonna make me blush. Hey, what if we did like a tavern-style theme? You know, Jason works at that meadery on 7th Street, and I'm sure he'd be able to help us out. I know they've done venues there before.
I can ask him, see what he says. I think they've only done venues for family stuff, though. I grew up with the owner and might be able to swing it. I know he and his wife had some sort of after-party there. I can see what they'll say about it and... Hello? Lily?
Abby?
Lily! Oh my god, are you okay?
I'm fine. Are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, just kind of stuck here. Did they do anything to you?
No, not that I can remember. I just kind of woke up in some room. Then next I remember I'm being dragged down the hallway, being pushed in here. Why didn't they chain me up like you?
I don't know, maybe he forgot, or you woke up too early and didn't want to bother trying to fight to tie you up.
I doubt it. How did we get here?
I don't know. I remember driving a car crash, and then I woke up here. You?
Pretty much the same. A car crash and then I'm being dragged.
Whatever. It doesn't matter right now. We need to get out of here.
Okay, then we need to try and get you out of that before he comes back. Is there anything in here we can use? It looks pretty weak and rusted. Even a rock might be able to bend it.
Not that I've seen, but when I woke up, I was already chained here. I remember seeing him putting something on the other side of the room.
Other side? Where?
I don't know. My memory is too fuzzy. There was something along that wall, though.
Wait, I think I found something.
A loose brick?
Yeah, it looks like there's something behind it, though. Here, looks like a key, I guess. Might fit the bracelet?
What do you mean, you guess?
Not really sure. See?
Oh, yeah, that's different.
Here, let me try. Okay, well, it fits. I can't... Here, try it. I just loosened it up for you.
Uh-huh, sure. That's one of the most uncomfortable things I've experienced.
Why would they leave the key in the room with you?
I don't know, but it doesn't matter right now. We need to get out of here.
Yeah, you try the door. I'll go double check the hole, just in case there's something else hidden in there.
Find anything?
No, but here, take this.
A stone?
It's a weapon, just in case. Key left in the room, me not being tied up, door being left unlocked. It seems too easy.
I was thinking the same thing. Seems too much like a setup.
All right, let's go. See anyone?
No, not right now. It's dark though. Maybe doing rounds. There's a lot of other closed rooms.
Which way?
I don't know. We could just...
I see we have a few escaped rats, so I'll be nice this once. You might want to warn her. Stand
Door up ahead.
What the hell is that thing?
I don't know and I don't care. Just as long as it doesn't catch us. What the hell is this?
Is that a bottomless pit?
We need to get across. There's a plank on the other side.
Okay. No way to get across. Wait, I have an idea. You need to trust me on this, okay? You need to run at me and step onto my hands and I'll try to help launch you over.
What?
There's no other way to get across. You can't launch me, and there's nothing else to grab onto.
Okay, just give me a minute.
We don't have a minute, Lily. Lily, trust me.
Okay. We did it!
Get aboard. Okay, you can get across this. Yeah, you can get across this. Never mind your fear of heights or anything. It'll be fine.
Come on, Adam. Don't look down. Just watch me. You can do this, Adam. Just keep your eyes on me.
Come on. Nice job on the jump.
Nice job yourself. I've seen you get worried going on the roof, climbing over a bottomless pit. Good job.
Thanks. Alright. So what do we have to do here?
I don't know. It's gotten quiet on the other side of the door, though. You think he just left?
Either that or I guess another way to get in here.
Good point. Let's hurry. Looks like just a big, open, mostly empty room.
Except for that large cloth or something over there. One door in, one door out. You want to do the honors?
Wait, what?
Well. Congratulations on the physical test. Now comes the mental test. We've made some changes to both of you recently, and that will become apparent here. In front of you are 3 large red buttons. All 3 of them open the doors in front of you. However, one just opens the door harmlessly. One kills Adam, and one kills Lily. Of course, you could sit there and spend hours making your decision. We, however, have a much stricter schedule, so we added a bit of motivation for you. You've already escaped him once, but he usually prefers to catch at least one before you jump the gap. As you can guess, the timer above the rising cage is going to be counting down. When it hits 0, we let him out. You have 30 seconds. Good luck.
What do we do?
I don't know. Press a button.
I don't want either of us to get killed.
I don't either, but if we don't press something, he'll get out.
I can't press it.
Fine then. I'll do it. Alright. Here goes. You okay?
Yeah, I think I'm fine.
Okay, so I guessed right.
Congratulations, Adam. Lucky guess. You'd be surprised how many can't bring themselves to chance of death of themselves or a loved one. You did, with little hesitation. Interesting.
That feels too easy. There's gotta be a catch.
And I'm willing to bet it's on the other side of that door.
Also, what happened to the thing hitting the box? It just gave up?
Oh no, he is definitely still there. He just can't hear you right now. I'd suggest you move forward, or I may let him out against my better judgment. I'll be fair here. You only have one more test. Finish it, and I'll let you out and it'll all be over. I promise. I'm a man of my word.
Alright. Here goes nothing.
One more. I'd still like to know how we got here.
It doesn't matter. As long as we can get out.
I don't trust him, though.
Neither do I. But it's all we have unless you want to stay in here with whatever is in the box. Oh, come on. Why the lights?
I can't see anything.
I know. Here, take my hand. Whatever you do, don't let go.
What now?
We need to chance it. On the other side of this room is probably a lever or switch or something. Maybe something to bring the lights back on. But we'll take it slow. If either of us slip on something, the other will need to help pull them back. Hopefully.
I'll go first then. It'll be a lot easier to pull me than for me to pull you.
Good point. All right. You lead.
Wait.
What?
Is there somebody else in here with us?
I don't know. Do you hear anything?
I don't know. We'll keep moving.
What?
We hit a wall. It feels like all the other walls in this place. Okay, we'll go left. Wait, I feel something. Feels like a handle.
Does it move? What?
You passed a quick physical test and a very simple mental test. Let's see how you pass an emotional test. Lily, you are no longer required for the next phase. Kill her!
No!
You, however, are definitely required for the next phase. Enjoy the rest, and we have much to prepare for.
Let us have music for Christmas. Sound the trumpet of joy and rebirth. Let each of us try with a song in our hearts to bring peace to men on earth. Our seventh story this evening is entitled My Friend Thinks She Is Dead, written by Hyper Obscure and performed by Jensen and Musey's Modern Dreadfuls.
Zoe was a pale and frail girl, with long, unkept platinum blonde hair. I guess if you didn't know any better, you could have easily mistaken her with a wandering corpse. A soulless ghoul. But you do know better, don't you? That stuff isn't real. Zombies, the walking dead, animated corpses. It's all kind of worn by now, isn't it? It's been done to death, no pun intended. But Zoe didn't know better. In fact, she was wholeheartedly convinced that she was dead. I don't even know when it first started. I guess shortly after the accident. I mean, it was a brutal trauma, and we were lucky to get out of the car wreck alive. Joey with some minor fractures, me with a concussion. But Zoe climbed out of there unscathed. Not a single mark on her. Sure, I get PTSD and all that. Climbing out of the flaming wreck without so much as a scratch on you can really mess with your head. But she clearly wasn't dead, you know? She had a pulse for one, a beating heart, a steady, healthy body temperature. She could walk, talk, and think, all signs of being alive, yet none of them enough to convince Zoe. The thing is, she didn't really tell anyone but me. But you could notice something was different about her. Still, people didn't seem to care. No one even bothered talking to her. Like, really talk, you know? I always found that strange. It was like she ceased to exist after the accident. Like the Zoe I knew died in the car.
I am dead.
She told me one day.
I never made it out of that car. Not really. Not all of me.
I didn't know how to respond to that. How do you respond to something like that? When a trauma is so rooted that deep, there's not much you can do, you know? There's nothing you can say that will somehow make things right. She stared at me with those haunting azure eyes, a somber expression frozen on her face. "No, you're not," I smiled. "You're very much alive, Zoe." I knew my words did nothing, meant nothing. Maybe she was right. Maybe something died in her that day. You know, metaphorically speaking. Like something inside of her broke or something.
I am sure of it.
She sat there just staring at me, like I was the only thing in existence. People wandered by slowly, casting brief, puzzling glances in our direction. They all had the same somber expression, though. A sad, frozen visage. "How do you know?" I asked. "How can you be so sure?" She sighed as she gently caressed a beautifully adorned headstone. To my utter confusion, I realized it had my name on it.
How else can you explain it? How else can I see you?
God goes to those who have time to hear him. And so on this cloudless night, he went to simple shepherds. Our 8th story this evening is by author Jojo. It features As the Raven Dreams and Spirit Voices, and is called Be Careful When Using Sleep Aid Apps.
Falling asleep at night is pretty difficult for me. It's not like I have insomnia or anything, but when I lay down, I just can't stop myself from thinking. I'll be lying there with my eyes shut, as comfortable as I can get, but despite how tired I am, the thoughts keep me up. It's never anything important. The darkness I swim in at night becomes populated by what-ifs and all the ways I could have handled different situations. Things like medicine can help me, and I do eventually fall asleep, but it is exhausting never getting enough, no matter how early I go to bed. The earlier I get there, the longer I'm just sitting there. It's begun affecting my work. I'm more sluggish than I would like to be, and I guess the lack of sleep was taking physical shape as well. I caught a quick look of concern from one of my coworkers that prompted me to head to the bathroom. Peering into the mirror under a light that barely lit up the small room, I observed the skin under my eyes had become noticeably darker. Reaching up, I pulled at the flesh. It was stretchy and sore. Awareness had taken a nosedive as well. I nearly screamed when I opened the door and the same coworker was standing there waiting for me. We were close for work friends. You know the person you hope will be on all the same shifts as you, like when you used to compare what classes you had to your friends in high school? Yeah, that was her. She asked me what was going on, and I told her everything I just told you. She was bubbly, so full of energy every day, no matter how early she had to get up. I asked her how she does it, how she's able to bounce around like she does. After reaching into her pocket to retrieve her phone, she showed me an app she had downloaded. I was surprised to find this chipper friend of mine had the same problem I did. I felt relieved in a way that I wasn't alone. With her fingers pressing the screen, she explained to me that her doctor suggested the app. It was one of those sleep aid apps, the ones that will loop white noise or even, as my friend recommended, tell you a story. She claimed that once the man begins his stories, it was like his voice was less taxing to focus on, and it helped her to silence that chaotic switching of channels that she experienced before. I downloaded the app right away and told her that I was excited to give it a try. And I was. If something as simple as an app could help me get some meaningful sleep, I was absolutely all for it. So, the day progressed, and the sun retreated beyond the horizon. I went through my usual routine of nonsense to pass the time until I felt tired enough to lumber off to bed. Somehow I had almost forgotten about the app by the time I set my head down on the pillow, but it wasn't long before my head became noisy and I was reminded. Stretching my hand out, I gripped the phone lying next to my bed. It was cool to the touch from the night's advancing air. With my eyes squinting, I navigated to the app and then through the selection of offerings it had. There was only one story that was available on the free app, but hell, if it worked, I would gladly drop some money on it. The story was titled, quote, "By the Fire." I clicked it and lowered the volume. The first thing I heard was the soft crackling of a fire. I could almost envision the sparks popping into a dark sky. There was a soft breezing behind the fire's licking flames. I could hear it rustling trees around. And then, his voice gently became audible. It was like he was coming up behind me but didn't want to scare me, so he kept his voice soft.
"Hello there,"
he spoke.
"I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's tale."
His voice was low and a little gruff, but it kept a very comfortable calm, the kind of voice you'd expect from a seasoned captain on an old shanty boat. It felt soothing.
"You don't have to think about anything. Just allow me to whisk you away to parts unknown. Allow me to fill your room with the crevices of your imagination."
He continued speaking as he moved into a story about a woman who lived alone. I guessed that By the Fire was more of an indication for the ambiance side of things instead of the actual content of the story. It didn't matter to me what the story was, though. I was hardly listening to it. My coworker was absolutely right. As his words filled my head, even though I wasn't paying attention to what was being said, it pushed out all other thoughts. It was like the external source of noise was easier to either ignore or process. I wondered if she actually listened to the stories. Either way, the spell was taking an effect on me. I could feel my breath slowing down and my body becoming more relaxed than it had been for weeks. Absent-mindedly, I began to drift off. I wasn't even thinking about how incredible that was for me. I wasn't thinking about anything.
"Your room is dark, filled more with moonlight than anything else. You begin to drift off to sleep."
As I crossed the threshold into true slumber, the man's voice seemed to redeem clarity in my mind.
"But you are stirred when you feel a pressure on the end of your bed."
The words were, of course, odd to me, and my mind started to wander again. Not because of what the man said specifically, but because I could feel the end of my bed dipping down.
Quickly, you sit up in bed, fear pulling you like a puppet.
Quickly I sat, my heart beating wildly as I looked around the dark room, and I discovered that I was alone. For a few good minutes I sat still, trying to gather myself, peering at any dark corner until the shapes became defined. After a while, I paid attention to the story again, and the man was going on about something completely unrelated. A farmer or something, like a new story had started. I know it sounds silly, but I took this as confirmation that the app worked. I figured all that happened was I got one of those vivid dreams and suddenly woke up in a panic. I laid back down, and before long I drifted off to sleep again, and without incident I remained in bed until the morning crept through the window, ushering away the darkness. I felt incredible. One good night of sleep can't undo months of terrible rest, but it was a damn good start. I made certain to sing praises to my friend all day at work. During my break, I purchased the premium version of the app and sifted through all the potential stories. They were all types of background noise, running water, chirping bugs, and even a still room. That night, I loaded up the app again and clicked on the still room option. It was mostly quiet, but now and then you could hear a car driving in the distance. It felt so real that I couldn't tell if it was the app or outside my window.
Hello again. Glad to have you back.
The man's voice was as calm as ever, but a little clearer without much background noise. I closed my eyes and got ready to get some more sleep, excited to wake up with enough energy to just jump out of bed.
I want to tell you a story about an animal.
My lips lifted into a smile. I love stories about adventurous animals. I mean, who doesn't love Homeward Bound? I thought that I would be paying attention to this story.
This animal is unlike any other. It is fast and nimble, yet so very powerful.
My mind wandered to pictures of large cats, powerful lions, and quick cheetahs.
This animal has no predator, and everything below it is prey.
I felt myself tremble for a moment, blankets ruffling with my movements.
It's never satisfied, always searching for something else to snack on, looking for the next person to mangle between its piercing fangs.
My eyes shot open and I peered at the phone, feeling my face twist into a scowl. The narration died down, and I listened close to the phone as a beam of light filled my room. A passing car. And as the car passed, I could hear in the app a car passing there as well. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I waited for the man to speak up again, even leaning in to try to catch more background noise. I heard a soft but ragged breath coming from my phone's speakers. It didn't sound like it was coming from some seasoned boat captain. It sounded exactly like it was coming from me. My breathing was coming from the app. Something in my brain took over, curiosity or sleep deprivation, I don't know. But I moved my fingers to my bedside table and tapped it with my fingernails. And sure enough, from within the app, I heard tap, tap, tap. I had enough. Still hoping I was asleep and far too confused to continue pushing my luck, I reached over to turn the phone off.
Once this creature sets its eyes on you...
My fingers stopped, just shy of closing the app, the phone once again sitting cold in my hand.
It will hunt until it has its fill.
As those words beamed to life, I once again felt a pressure on my bed. This time it felt like someone had just laid down beside me on it. Something large and heavy, the pressure on the mattress nearly causing me to spill over it.
If there was anything that can be done about this ancient creation, it surely would have been done by now.
It was almost like the voice was digging into my head and searching through my thoughts as I desperately considered ways to get out of whatever the hell I was in. I could feel a hot huff of breath waft against the back of my neck. Whatever mouth had produced it was massive. It felt like someone had flicked a fan quickly on and off. I just wanted to close the app. I couldn't decide if it would help or hurt, though. I had no idea what I had gotten into or how to handle it. I would have much rather dealt with the insistent nagging of my inner thoughts for the rest of my life than feel even a tenth of the fear I was feeling ever again. My eyes stayed focused on the phone like I was waiting for instruction. The last thing I wanted to do was get a good look at whatever was behind me. I could vaguely see it, reflected on my phone screen, a dark mass that seemed to stretch up to the ceiling. I couldn't imagine how I could have ever missed something that large entering my room. There was a low murmur to it, like just breathing was producing an intimidating growl from the behemoth. I wish to God that I would have just woken up. That at any point my eyes would have opened and I'd be greeted with the sunlight. But that's not what happened. I sat still. As my mind emptied with each passing moment, all I could think about was the monster behind me. It felt like the thing was sucking away all the thoughts that used to plague me, feeding on them.
And once it gets its fill...
The narration trailed off, and from the speakers on my phone, I could hear an ear-piercing scream. The room getting louder and louder, echoing until I realized my mouth had long been open wide, my own shrill cries crawling out from the open cavity. My shoulder was hot, white, a tingling burn that I had never felt before.
It will take a piece, so you can never forget it, so it can return another day.
My arm bent backward, powerful vice-like digits wrapping around my forearm and nearly crushing the bone with nothing but just the strength of its grip. My arm was wrought in an intense pain that sent me spiraling into unconsciousness and back again. My body was pumping adrenaline like a junkie. I prayed that shock would take me, that I would find retrieval from the agony. I felt every bit of it, though, until all that was left was nothing. My arm had been pulled and twisted, bones cracked and skin split open. It was mangled until it freed from my back. Splitting apart right at the bicep, what little muscle I had tried to hold together far longer than I would have wanted it to. Every extra second of helplessness was an eternity of anguish. The pressure that was once on the bed vanished, and I was left alone, my screams dying down and the heat my body had created dissipating. I laid all night, face soaked in my tears and the memories of my pain still painted in my mind. I know that whatever that thing was had torn my arm right off my body because I could feel every moment of it. So I was confused when my arm tapped against the bed, laying limp, still connected to my body like nothing had ever happened. The pain, I know it was real. It was unending. I can't stop thinking about it or that creature. And that's exactly what it wants.
I hope you'll join me for a story tomorrow night.
The soothing voice rang out again.
Because if you don't, it won't give back what it's taken next time.
The story ended. A penny for your thoughts and a pound of flesh. The thing was full. It's the same thing every night. It's a looping hell. I've tried so many things. I'm too afraid to delete the app, but I've tried sleeping during the day. I can do it. Sort of. If nothing else, I don't think about things anymore. Anytime I find my mind becoming cluttered with thoughts again, that thing visits me and eats all that it can, making damn sure to put me through whatever pain it can push on me. I felt my chest ripped open with jagged and dirty fingernails. I felt my limbs torn off one by one and my body crushed under an indescribable weight. I'm always reset back to zero, though. It always gives back what it's taken and reverses the damage it's done. I think it doesn't feed off my pain or my flesh. It just needs me to remember it. It needs to be in my thoughts so it can visit again. but anything short of a lobotomy, I'll never be able to force myself to forget that thing or what it puts me through. Some nights, it doesn't come. Some nights the app is just an app that tells regular stories to help me sleep. But I never can. My mind isn't busy shifting from one thought to the next anymore, though. It's always stuck on that thing. Always imagining what it looks like, what ghastly form it takes, because I refuse to look. I won't give it that. I won't give it a final form in my head. I just want one goddamn night of good rest.
And that, of course, is the message of Christmas. We are never alone. Not when the night is darkest, the wind coldest, the world seemingly most indifferent. Our penultimate story tonight is The In-Dream Hotline by Christopher Maxim, featuring Midnight Pasta and Scarecrow Tales.
The business card left in my mailbox was unassuming. A simple white font affixed to a black background, but its claim was bold. There is now an in-dream hotline you can call to escape nightmares. Simply find a rotary phone in your dreamscape, dislocate it from the receiver, and choose a number to be connected. A good night's sleep is just around the corner. Enjoy your rest. It had all the markings of a half-hearted prank from my friend Josh. After all, he was the only person I had told about my recent night terrors. But stooping that low, just for a cheap laugh? He knew my nightmares were deeply personal, all involving my deceased father. Would he really go that far? Though Josh was a funny guy, he could be sentimental when the time called for it. I wondered if this was less a prank and more of an offering of relief during a tough time. His way of telling me there would eventually be a way out, a light at the end of the tunnel. I took comfort in this, opting not to reach out in case he decided to go back on it and laugh in my face. However caring the man could be, he detested heart-to-heart moments. Thanks, Josh. I guess I needed this. With a slight smile, I placed the card in my pocket and went about my day, grateful for the gesture. Unfortunately, it would not be enough to keep my demons at bay. Later that night, while resting, I was blindsided by memories of my father, completely out of my control. A horrific scene came into focus, replaying the events of his death. I had no choice but to endure the torment and watch the events unfold in my mind, just as they had so many times before. I was a child, and we were swimming at our favorite spot on the outskirts of town. We often played a game to see who could hold their breath underwater the longest. On my father's last dip beneath the waves, he never came up for air. His body was never found. Being young and naive, I was convinced a creature dragged him to the depths of the ocean. As an adult, I now know this monster was a riptide, pulling him out to uncharted waters. Undercurrents in that area were fierce, eventually leading local authorities to close off the beach altogether. The search party never stood a chance of finding him. I violently thrashed about as the horrible images recurred, but soon found solace in the form of sleep. Like the many nights that came before it, this solace would be short-lived. My dream began as it usually did. I watched from the shadows as my dad tucked in my younger self and read aloud a bedtime story. This moment was always so peaceful, a calm before the storm. I briefly basked in the ambient nostalgia before remembering the events that would inevitably come next. That's when the panic set in. After the story concluded, my father transformed into something horrific. Below his waist was now a grouping of slimy tentacles, wetting the floor as he slid across it. Above his collar were the grotesque features of a monstrous head, an amphibious amalgamation of loose appendages, sharp teeth, and gills protruding from his neck. His mouth opened at an unnatural angle, wide enough for it to devour my younger self whole. He then turned his attention to me. This was my cue to run. Racing through the house to escape the creature's clutches, I felt something fall from my shirt pocket. It was the in-dream hotline business card. I picked it up and looked it over. Despite the fragile nature of visual stimuli in dreams, the card was identical to its real counterpart. No matter how many times I read the text, none of the characters were fuzzy, jumbled, or rearranged. A thunderous growl crept up from behind. I sprinted to the living room. That's where I saw it. Right where my family's landline usually sat. A red rotary phone. In this moment, a compulsion washed over me. Despite the service being a complete fabrication, I was compelled to give it a try, if for no other reason than to see what would happen when I did. Perhaps my sleeping mind would fill in the blanks and wake me from the nightmare. I picked up the phone from the receiver and held it to my ear. There was a harrowing silence. Going over the card again, I realized it was time to pick a number. It seemed there were only 5 viable choices. Numbers 6 through 0 had been scuffed away, along with the pound and star keys. When placing my finger in these holes, the wheel wouldn't budge. I instead decided to choose number 1. The wheel turned, and my ear was met with a male voice.
Thank you for calling the in-dream hotline for escaping nightmares. How can we be of service?
It worked. My brain was playing along. I need to escape this nightmare, please. Quickly.
Certainly, I'll be happy to assist you with this. Please hold while I look up your situation.
The sound of grinding teeth echoed in the distance as the creature slid from room to room, searching for me.
Oh boy, childhood trauma mixed with a phobia of sea monsters. That does not sound like fun. Luckily, this is an issue we are equipped to deal with. You have 3 options: transport, reconfigure, and vanish. Which one would you like?
The monster had now honed in on my position, slithering towards me as my eyes widened in terror. Vanquish. Get rid of this thing.
Okay, one moment.
I watched in horror as the creature closed the gap between us in a matter of seconds.
looks like your account is new. You do not have the options to reconfigure or vanish yet. All we can do is transport. Shall I initiate this option for you?
The eldritch version of my father swung its tentacles over me, narrowly missing my head as I cowered in fear.
Fine. Transport. Do it now.
One transport coming right up.
All at once, the sound of grinding teeth stopped. The moisture on the floor evaporated. The creature was frozen in place, a statue of pure dread. It then vanished before my very eyes.
Transport successful. Thank you for calling the in-room hotline. Enjoy your rest.
It worked. I couldn't believe it. It's difficult to explain, but I felt alleviated. A wave of relief so strong, it allowed me to breathe again. Catharsis filled the air as I walked through the dream version of my childhood home, free of the guilt I had harbored for so many years. My nightmare was finally over. I slept through the night and awoke fully refreshed, knowing that somehow I had come to terms with my father's death, albeit through strange means. Sunlight poured into the room as a bird outside sang a beautiful melody, the smell of home-cooked food wafting through my apartment. But I lived alone. Upon venturing out to the kitchen to identify the source of the aroma, I was taken aback by what I saw. It was my dad, cooking a seafood feast fit for a family of 12.
Hey there, sport. How's your nap?
My mouth hit the floor. Dad. But how? He smiled.
What's wrong, sport? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Dumbstruck and frightened, I ran to my bedroom and locked the door. That was not my father. It couldn't be. He was swept out to sea. No one could have survived out there. It just wasn't possible. My phone buzzed, interrupting my panic. It was a private number. I hesitantly answered.
Hello, this is the in-dream hotline for escaping nightmares. We don't normally make calls outside the dream void, but we noticed your recent transportation order has gone awry. We're here to help.
What? Josh, is that you? What's going on? Is this some sort of sick joke?
Transports can be unpredictable. We apologize for the inconvenience. If you upgrade to one of our premium package, we can aid in the removal of your nightmare. We accept all major credit cards.
Did my ears deceive me? Was the in-dream hotline real?
These silver packages are our cheapest upgrade, allowing you to reconfigure your nightmare, but there is no guarantee on the results that will be any better. We do suggest purchasing our gold package, an option which lets you vanquish the nightmare once and for all.
A stream of seawater entered my room as a tentacle snuck beneath the door.
Lunch is ready, sport. Hope you're hungry. I know I am.
I handed over my credit card information without so much as a second thought. I'll take the gold package, please.
Brilliant. Please hold.
The sound of tapping at a keyboard filled my ear as my father began banging at the door.
Your transaction is in transit. It will take 5 to 7 business days to process, in which time your nightmare will be vanquished.
5 to 7 days? Were they serious? I have to wait how long? What am I supposed to do in the meantime?
Thank you for calling the in-room hotline for escaping nightmares. We sincerely hope you live long enough to continue doing business with us. Good luck.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, before we go, just one more. The Ghoul of Valley Forge by Mr. Evan 312.
Bloody hell, I'm starving.
Those dreary words often echoed around the camp of desperate, bloodied souls. Some spoken aloud, others only passed in pained whispers, or simply purveying the entire atmosphere in the Valley Forge encampment. Morale was incredibly low, lower than the temperature. The flashing steel and the blood-red uniforms of the British Army were as far from everyone's mind as the ragged band of patriots languished in the cold. The biggest danger to the Continental Army did not come from without, but from within. No enlisted man, officer, nor volunteer did not know hunger. Without proper supplies, they'd taken to eating anything from roots and tree bark to cotton or sawdust, just to fill the howling voids that were their shrunken guts. What Solomon, or Sully, as his comrades called him, did not like was that the words came from Arthur, his closest friend. They were dragging a wrapped, stiff corpse of a perished fellow patriot through the surrounding forest. The look in his eyes as he sized up the body gave Sully a strange feeling in his stomach. He could not fault Arthur that much. They wore ragged uniforms, or at least what passed for uniforms in this outfit, none of which did much to prevent the cold from seeping into their very bones. They carried muskets over their shoulders, which they'd fired in anger at the English, and both of them had killed men before. Yet, just like many of the boys in this so-called army, they could not call themselves true hardened soldiers. Even those true soldiers that remained were in the same boat as the rest. Officer or low ranking, the hunger, misery, and the cold were truly equalizers.
What's wrong, Sully?
The boy tried biting his tongue. Arthur was younger than him, not by much, but he acted even younger. He was a rash and flighty youth. Sully made sure to stick to his friend like honey to keep him out of trouble. But like Arthur's hunger made him impulsive and morbid, Sully's made him incredibly irritable and quick to anger. And this time he gave in to the rage.
Must you always say that whenever you look at a corpse?
He barked harshly.
God damn it, Arthur. These are people.
Sully dropped the feet of the body, causing his friend to stumble under the weight as he stood to take his full height.
Christ, if you so much as think of that sort of thing again...
I'm not,
Arthur protested, the look of hunger replaced with one of shame. He nervously rubbed his hands on his threadbare sleeves, trying to warm his stiff, achingly cold fingers as best he could.
I've been hearing things in the camp. They's keeping Washington's horse on their armed guard. Wonder what they're getting paid to keep their chops off that thing. I bet it'd feed 12 men for a week. I'm long tired of boiled bark and moss.
Sully folded his arms tightly to his chest, hugging what was left of his already thin blue and red trim jacket to his pronounced ribs. Like Arthur, he'd forgotten the feeling of a full belly, forced to subsist on little more than a few scarce roots that they dug from the winter-hardened soil.
Can't enjoy the meat when you've got a noose around your neck with a bullet in your liver. Don't make me teach you what becomes of those who give in and eat human flesh.
Arthur suddenly froze in place, turning only his eyes to lock onto those of his older friend. A pale look had entered the boy's rosy, frost-nipped cheeks.
Please spare me, Sully. You know I hate those kind of stories.
And so he did. Arthur was, in many ways, a fearless lad, never scared of his fellow man. He was a fierce fighter in battle for his smaller size, reminding one of a scrappy wildcat. However, Sully knew he was terrified of the old wives' tales of what stalked in the dark. More than once growing up, Arthur had slept with a lit lantern or curled up by the fire after his father or his brothers had teased him with stories. The story of the Scottish banshee from their ancestral homeland gave the boy a particular fright in his youth. So much as hearing a female yell in the distance could set him off. Sully was not so cruel as Arthur's family and friends, so he kept those tales to himself. However, just because he did not speak them aloud did not mean that he was lacking a few yarns of his own to spin on some nights around a fire with the men. Many of the natives who he had made contact with, such as the Lenape, had their own ghost stories tied to the land itself. These were just tales, however, stories to scare children or fools like Arthur. But Sully was no fool, and was certainly no longer a child. He knew that man only had itself to fear. After a moment, the two picked up their ends of the corpse again. They'd nearly forgotten about it, standing quietly and awkward in the cold as the snowfall became thicker around them. They did not speak now. Arthur was ashamed of himself, and Sully simply having no more to say. At least, having starved to death, this body was not very heavy. It was all they could muster the strength to shuffle about their job at little more than a snail's pace. Their hunger and the cold had cost them both a great deal of sleep. There was no proper burial place near the camp. Sickness was already ravaging the army, and the last thing anyone wanted was to bury the dead too close by. A few soldiers, who had simply withered away from hunger, were elected to be buried deep in the woods, in a small clearing Arthur had found while on patrol. By now, even in the now surprisingly thick snowfall, the two knew their way by heart, and by now the corpse seemed to be growing heavier. It had become easier to let down one's guard in the banal, dismal conditions. In these close quarters, the only thing more familiar than one's fellow soldiers and their grumbling stomachs was the daily monotony of waking up, starving, and trying to sleep. The woods around the camp had long since been harvested to the bone. The animals were virtually gone, and any roots, berries, or even carrion had been inevitably devoured. Vigilant Patriot scouts made sure that no one, not even the stealthiest natives, could penetrate the defenses. A shame, Sully thought to himself, because he would have traded his month's ammunition ration, perhaps even his musket, with a Lenape warrior for a scrawny rabbit or a couple of squirrels. And that's why, when Sully looked past Arthur's shoulder into the clearing, he stopped, dead in his tracks. Just ahead in the pale gloom of the falling snow was a small pile of frozen corpses. The two boys had been working much of the day to prepare them for burial. They'd been wrapped in white linen, which was rapidly blending with the forest floor as snow began to dust the rotting leaves and dirt. This made it stand out even more. Leaning over the pile of bodies was a tall figure, completely hidden under a long, cream-coloured coat with a black tri-corner hat atop their head. The coat had been well made, yet was incredibly worn and tattered, covered in dark stains, and the green colour and cuffs all but faded to a washed-out drab. Sully knew that regimental colour was part of no army he knew or had ever faced. Still, he could swear that he'd seen that green and cream-coloured sort of coat somewhere before. The figure seemed to be rummaging through one of the cadavers, having discarded its burial sheet off to the side. What immediately alarmed Sully was that this man was set to be buried without any clothing or possessions, for uniforms were preserved to be given to other recruits that needed them. So, this meant the newcomer was, in fact, not merely interested in pickpocketing the dead. It was clear that this person was interested in the only earthly possession this lost soul had to offer. This revelation sickened Scully to his stomach, and rage began to boil in his blood. Dropping his end of the burden, he swung his musket off his shoulder, raised it to his shoulder, and levelled it in the stranger's direction.
"Just what do you think you're doing, friend?"
His deep, harsh voice rang across the clearing with an unmistakable echo. The stranger stopped whatever it was doing, and was frozen in place.
"What are you playing at, Sully?"
Arthur, his back still to the scene, glared at Sully in confusion. With a speed that neither of the boys had ever witnessed in a living creature, the figure whipped around to meet them. Sully's weapon began to shake when he noticed the figure had not turned, but rather only its head had somehow twisted around to look him in the face. This had not been an arcing twist or the craning of the neck, reminding Sully of one of the wooden neck hinges from one of his father's puppets. However, this action did not sicken him nearly so much as the face of the figure. If it had once been human, that had clearly long been abandoned or stripped away. The shape of its head clearly matched a human skull, but The skull was almost the sum total of what remained. Whatever flesh that remained hung in thin, desiccated, tattered strands. Bits of it even hung loose like drying lichen. The teeth were jagged, brown, broken with bits of flesh stuck between them, and the lower jaw was smeared with cold, thick, dark, congealed blood. The eye sockets looked like they'd been long empty, the sightless eyes having perhaps been stolen by carrion birds. In their place, the sockets poured forth a thin trail of what looked like white smoke or mist. The two stood and stared at each other. If what the figure was doing could even be called staring, for what felt like hours. It did not so much as waver or shift position from where it silently considered these two intruders upon its gruesome meal. Even Arthur did not so much as budge, fixated on the absence of colour in his friend's face.
Arthur,
Sully spoke quietly, not sure if he was trying not to be heard by the creature, or to mask the quiver in his voice.
when I give the word, throw yourself to the ground.
What the hell is it, Sully? What the devil's behind me?
Damn it all. Just do as you're told. Now.
Everything seemed to happen slowly in Sully's eyes. Arthur began falling to his right-hand side. His finger, rigid with frostbites, curled tighter around the trigger of his brown bess. A cloud, like gun smoke, slowly curled from his lips as he let out a breath to steady his aim. Arthur's foot lifted some of the rotting leaves from the forest floor into the air. He could see the hammer of the flintlock begin to plunge towards the priming pin. Sparks from the flint drifted into the air like leaves in a breeze. The priming powder slowly began to spark, and then blaze brightly. Sully could swear he saw everything happen at once at that moment. And yet, in the midst of all this movement, not once did he see the figure even twitch. It stayed motionless as a stone. The musket thundered and bucked backward, filling the area with smoke and shattering the deathly silence like a hammer to a crystal glass. Solomon had positioned himself well to handle the recoil, but he did not even notice the weapon's substantial kick. He stood with bated breath, Arthur having twisted to look behind him from where he lay on the forest floor. They stared into the cloud, neither of them sure what to expect. It finally settled and cleared, revealing the figure to be sitting exactly where it had been before. Sully was at a loss for words. He was certain he'd hit it full square, right beneath the left shoulder blade. And that's when Arthur raised a trembling finger towards the stranger, pointing to the back of its coat.
Mother of Christ. Sully, look.
Sully's aim had been true, striking the stranger right where his heart should have been, producing a clear hole. However, no blood was coming from the wound at all. This was an injury that should have been spraying that vital fluid across the forest floor, or spreading in a crimson stain upon the coat. Instead, all the two could see was a black, seemingly bottomless hole, from which drifted a wisp of that strange pale smoke. The creature, for it was already clear this was inhuman, was entirely unperturbed.
By God, what are you?
Was all Solomon could bring himself to say. With the hushed utterance of these words, the thing leaped into action, moving like a mere blur. Sully's gut instinct kicked in. Dropping his now useless musket, he threw himself on top of Arthur in a gallant, brotherly action. Draping his larger frame over that of the boy, he braced for the clasp of a cold, dead hand around his neck. Yet it did not come. When Sully dared to crane his neck and see, the figure had instead taken the corpse by the ankles with its rotting hands. Quickly lugging it out of the clearing, it had already reached the tree line. The corpse had taken 2 boys to carry, yet this monster moved with the strength of 3 large, well-fed men at once. In its hurry to leave, the corner of its great coat had snagged on a protruding root. However, seemingly not noticing, or just ignoring the inconvenience, it merely continued along, and the coat was discarded on the ground. This gave Sully a full view of the horror he had just encountered, before it disappeared with its grisly prize forever. It had a human shape, walking on a pair of legs with 2 arms, but it more closely resembled a bedraggled scarecrow. Almost all of its skin and muscle were absent, as if this were a corpse picked clean by vultures, yet miraculously continued to walk afterward. It was almost pathetic to look upon, as if a stiff wind could carry it away. The few shriveled tendons that were left seemed barely sufficient to hold the bones together, never mind provide it with the unearthly strength, speed, and grace with which it moved. There was undoubtedly something incredibly dark and unholy that drove this wretch past the point of death, if it had ever been alive in the first place. All the 2 boys could do was stare at each other in absolute shock of what they had just witnessed. They were uncertain about what they'd actually seen. They were not sure of when the alerted Patriot sentries had come running to the scene of the gunshot, demanding to know what had happened. They were at a loss what they would say to their commanding officers back in the camp. But one thought was foremost on the 2 young men's minds. Their appetites and shriveled stomachs had been thoroughly vanquished from the forefront of their minds. Well, thank you for joining me and my friends here this evening. Hope you've enjoyed this series of stories. Please do me a favour and go and check out their channels. They're all passionate horror story readers just like myself, and they all deserve a little bit more attention. So, that's my Christmas wish for you all. Go out and check out their channels. Well, my dear friends, that's enough for me for one evening, but I'll be back again tomorrow on my podcast, and on Friday, that's right, nothing stops me. Friday I'll be back with a long story for you all. Till next time, happy Christmas, happy holidays, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.